Hola, clase de español 3. Hello, Spanish 3 class. It's time to get to work, okay? There's a lot of vocabulary this week, so I think I'm just going to get right directly into that first, and then we'll talk a little bit about the brief amount of grammar. I think that you'll find the grammar, which is called the present perfect tense, fairly simple to understand and to grasp for this week. So let's get into the vocab because that's the lion's share of what we're really going to be looking at and working with. So here we go. The first theme, advantages and disadvantages of modern life. A la vez means at the same time, a la vez. Adaptarse is to adapt. Los adelantos are advances. La antena parabólica, great word. It's just the word for satellite dish. It literally translates to the antenna parabolic, like a parabolic antenna. La autopista is like a highway, freeway, or expressway. La computadora is a computer, the computer. El contestador is an answering machine. Now I realize nowadays there's several things in here because these books were done a while ago and the lists were made a while ago. We've had advances. A lot of people don't even use an answering machine anymore, and so we just have like voicemail in the cloud or something like that. So a lot of times, just so you're aware, they'll say el voicemail. But for places that still have them, a contestador is an answering machine. La desventaja is disadvantage or the disadvantage. Empeorar means to make worse or to worsen in some way. You can see the word peor kind of embedded in there, which means worse, literally, okay? Enseguida means right away or immediately. Enviar una carta electrónica is to send an email. Again, now some things are changing a little bit. Now they just might say, dame un email, give me an email, or shoot me an email, or something like that. So enviar una carta electrónica, they won't say an electronic letter. They're just going to say el email. But it's good to know both, and we need to know both. So la fotocopiadora is a photocopy machine. Hacer trabajos literally translates to do works or to do chores or something. But in this field, it's going to refer to doing papers. So like to write papers and things like that. Cocinar en el horno de microondas. You'd probably be able to figure that out, like to cook in the oven of microwaves. What they mean to say is cocinar en el microondas. A lot of times they won't say horno de microondas anymore, but good to know both still. Hoy en día means like nowadays. Informar, to inform. We'll move up a little bit here for you. Manejar is to drive. Navegar por el internet. So like to surf the web. So a lot of times they won't say, that's not even a phrase that we use anymore because it's not really a thing. It's just like a normal everyday. They'll just say, me voy online, like I'm going online. Okay. El rascacielos is a skyscraper. El siglo is a century. La tecnología, technology. A lot of these you can kind of figure out just by looking at like el teléfono celular, obviously a cell phone. El tráfico is traffic. Ventaja is an advantage. La vida diaria, daily life. And this is a really older one here. I'm sure many of you probably don't have as much familiarity with it. La videocasetera, aka VCR, video cassette player. Again, not used as much anymore, but there it is. Okay, here's a couple examples of our grammar for this week as well, but it's set to the backdrop of some vocab. So, ha cambiado mucho means a lot has changed. Empeorado bastante means it's gotten a lot worse. And mucha gente ha venido de afuera. Many people have come from outside. Kind of weird that they would put that as like a vocab word. It's more like a complete phrase, but nonetheless, there it is, okay? Let's go ahead and get to the next section here. So the first one, el ayuntamiento, is a town hall, the space, like the actual place, not the act of having one. El basurero is like a trash can. La calidad del aire is air quality. Crecer is to grow. Establecer una zona peatonal is to establish, now this is kind of a specific word, is to establish a pedestrian zone, like to make a sidewalk or to make an area where this makes more sense in Spain and Central and Latin America, where you have plazas where you don't allow cars to get into and it's only for walking around. So la fábrica is a factory or a plant. Mejorar is to improve, has the word mejor right in there, which is to make better. And then sembrar. Sembrar is to, hold on a second here. Sembrar. This was a kind of weird. I had to look it up myself earlier because I had a different word for it. It literally means to plant something. Now, don't get it confused with la fábrica, which is a plant. La fábrica is like an industrial style plant. And sembrar, when they talk about this a little bit, they're going to talk about how it means to introduce things to a different area of the city. There's a lot of dynamics to this one. So anyways, moving on. Creo que vale la pena. I think it's worthwhile. Es cierto que, it's certain that. Lo que es importante es, what's important is. Lo que noto, what I notice is. Me imagino que, I imagine that. Me parece que, it seems to me. And por otro lado is on the other hand. So, en un lado on one side, and then on the other side. The lado isn't actually hand, it should be mano for that, but that's the correct expression. Sometimes the literal versus the general rears its ugly head again, and that's what that's all about. Let's go ahead and take a look at, and so that's it for a lot of vocab, like I mentioned. Let's go ahead and take a look at our grammar for this week. Fairly simple. I think that you guys will find it relatively easy to pick out. There are some things that will require you to do some more memorization, like usual, but let's get right into it. This is actually a fairly common use and a good one to know. It's called the present perfect tense. It's like saying what things have been done. You're going to say, I have completed my test, or something like that. The I have part is in the present tense, and then the word completed by itself, like the ed versions of words, is what we're going to be focusing in on. Those are actually called participles, and we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about those, of course, in class. Let's just go ahead and read through it. The present perfect tense tells what has or has not happened. It's formed by combining the present tense of the verb haber, not tener, which means to have. Haber is like to have done something, so it's a little bit, it's a little bit more in depth than that. And then the past participle, what in English we would call the ed version. In Spanish, it's the ado or ido version of the verb, as you're going to see in a moment. To form the past participles of regular verbs, you just drop the AR, ER, IR of the infinitive and add these new endings. So if it's an AR verb, you're going to drop the AR and add ado. If it's an ER, IR verb, you drop the ER, IR and add ido to it. Fairly simple. So if you want to say, for example, I have danced, it's he bailado. You have danced, has bailado. He or she has danced, ha bailado. We have danced, or we've danced, hemos bailado. You all, informal, like you all have danced, or you all dance, habéis bailado, and then han bailado for they've danced. So just sort of note that if it's an AR verb, that it still uses haber when it's an ER and IR verb too. Notice it's A for both of them, as for both of them, a, amos, habéis, and an. So we'll be practicing that in class, of course. A, as, a, hemos, habéis, an. Kind of a weird one, and we'll get used to it. So in this case, we use the word comido for each of its conjugations because we're saying like I have eaten, you have eaten, he or she has eaten, etc. So we turn the word comer into comido for all forms. So we're going to play with that a little bit. The problem, it's like, as you can see, it's not really a difficult thing to figure out mechanically, but there are some irregular participles that I want to share with you. Here they are. So all of these are irregular participles. So instead of saying abrido, it becomes abierto. Instead of saying decido, it's dicho. Instead of saying descubrido, it's descubierto. Instead of escribido, it's escrito. Instead of being asido, it's hecho. And continuing on, muerto, puesto, roto, visto, vuelto. So if you were to translate these, like abrir is to open, decir is to talk, descubrir is to discover, this is going to be like opened, said, discovered, written, done, dead, put. I know that's kind of weird, but that's the correct one. Broken, seen, returned, etc. Okay, so we're going to play with those a lot more in class. Just wanted to intro that to you as well. So just a couple notes on this one. Forms of haber and the past participle are considered one verb conjugation unit. They can't be separated by other verbs. That kind of throws people off a little bit, especially when you see this one sentence I wanted to show to you right here. Has visto a Teresa? Have you seen Teresa? Literal translation, You have seen to Teresa? And then the response is, no, I haven't seen her yet. But the problem is the literal translation is so wacky. If you were to look at it word for word in order, it would be no, no, her, I have seen still. But that's not what I said, right? I said, no, I haven't seen her yet. So when you're talking about having not seen someone before, they'll use the word todavía for still, or they'll use it in place of the word yet. So todavía means both of those things. And then you have, I have not her seen still. It's really weird like that. So we're going to tear apart a bunch of sentences like that this week. Hopefully it ends up making a lot of sense for you. And I hope that this lowers your level of concern a little bit about what we're learning this week. The only thing that's really going to be a bit more of a challenge is all of the vocab. And so we're going to muddle through that on a daily basis and do a lot of work with it. And we'll get right to it. I hope that this video finds you well. Some of you probably stayed to the very, very end wondering, hey, any extra credit on this darn thing? I'm going to say yes this time. I know that sometimes I'll do it, sometimes I won't. But I'm going to just do the same one as we did several times before, which is simply to be 5 sentences, both in English, or sorry, both in Spanish and English. Please do those using the present perfect tense. So 5 sentences in Spanish on a note card using the present perfect tense. Please do not use any of the example, like don't use this example right here, and try to use something that you haven't seen or it doesn't come directly out of the book, okay? So 5 original sentences that you create. Give me the Spanish sentence as well as your pronunciation. All right, very good. I'm glad that we had this time. All right, I hope that you had a great weekend and back to work. Ciao, hasta luego y adios.